Welcome to Mirage. This is Brian Yellow, and today we're going to be speculating on pirates. And joining me again is Jillian Purrazzi.
It's Jelaine, but you can
Jillian.
just call me Jill, you know.
Yeah, it's true.
Um,
Let's see. So, pirates in speculative fiction.
yes.
Are you a pirate person?
I love anything history, and so pirates definitely fall into that category.
I think we were going to do Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, his
That's
pirate
right.
work in that, his seminal
Yeah.
work of fiction. And it's just the idea of pirates throughout speculative fiction is fascinating because, I mean, you can go all the way up to space.
Yeah.
Space pirates, man. Did you ever see a movie? It was called Ice Pirates. I think it came out in like 83 or something.
I
It's like
haven't, no.
No, oh, you have to check it out. It's so bad.
Yeah.
It's so horrible. But I mean, that was like an answer to like Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi or something like that.
Yeah.
I'll look it up. I wonder if anybody got famous from that movie. But so you love history and you love pirates.
Yes.
Do you love Somali pirates?
Somali pirates?
Yeah.
Like
Oh my
the more
God.
modern?
This movie has 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. 9%. 9%. How is this not like a cult classic? Everybody's watching it. Should be.
Maybe it's just one of those, one of those movies that isn't quite so bad that it's good.
Maybe. Robert
like
or Urich is in it. Mary Crosby. Michael D. Roberts. I mean, besides Robert Urich, I've never heard of any of these other people. I want to watch this movie tonight. Angelica Houston is in it. I mean, it's got an amazing cast. Ron Perlman is in it.
Wow.
John Carradine is in it. These are some incredible people. This movie sucked, though. See anybody else pop up. That's pretty much it. So tell me about your history with pirates. What brought you to bring this up as a possible discussion today?
Yeah, well, I think, like a lot of people, Pirates of the Caribbean was like this like huge part of my childhood. Not quite childhood, but yeah, like it was watched over and over and over again in our house. But of course, around that time as well, Treasure Planet came out, and I think
Oh, it's a cartoon, isn't it? Disney?
It is, yes. And I think that's probably my favorite, at least my favorite animated movie, if not my favorite movie of all time. It's just brilliant. And of course, that focuses on space pirates, but in kind of a very unique way.
What was the movie that Matthew Damon voiced a character in? It's a cartoon that came out in like the late 90s. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I wouldn't be able to say. I'm not sure.
Know
I was really sheltered as a kid, so there's not a lot of.
Wow, you have so much stuff to catch. I'm going to look it up right now. I just pulled up Disney's Pirate of the Caribbean because I'm really curious where Disney's inspiration for the Pirates of the Caribbean ride came from, which is also the precursor to the movies, right? And I remember they had a movie back, like, I always want to say everything's in the 50s, but it probably wasn't. Curse of the Black Pearl or something like that. You've not seen that one either.
Nope.
You need to watch some pirate movies.
I do. I feel like I've seen a lot, but like in all honesty, I think that pirates, just like the classic historical pirates, kind of went out of style quite a while ago. There was a period of time where pirate books and pirate movies and pirate stories, as well as westerns and kind of those more swashbuckling adventures, were really popular.
Mm-hmm.
And
that wasn't on the 50s,
they kind of went
60s.
out of style.
I'm surprised that the Pirates of the Caribbean didn't bring them back.
Yeah, but it hasn't, like, if you look at it, hasn't fully brought it back because there's not a lot of pirate movies still. There's a lot of space pirates. It's very popular in, space films, space books, and of course, in steampunk, which actually Treasure Planet is a steampunk. They're quite popular in those genres, and even in fantasy to some extent. But the classical historical pirates have kind of gone out of style a little bit.
Yeah. What about in fiction? Do you know of any speculative fiction written around pirates?
Oh, I feel like pirates are very popular in speculative fiction, especially like I just mentioned, science fiction and fantasy, and particularly in steampunk. I feel like I see them pop up in steampunk a lot because, of course, then you get the great, ship in the sky with the whole Peter Pan-esque feeling and Zeppelin and all that whatnot. Um, yeah, I think the problem is, similar with westerns, is there's just not a lot of plot. There's not a lot of roads in a plot you can explore with the typical historical pirate
I love it.
story.
It's romantic, right? I mean, the fact that these guys,
Yeah,
I mean, what was it back in the day? They used to run in communes on ships where everybody got a part of it. Everybody had a say. And if you didn't put
yeah,
up your part of the effort, you got keyholed. You got shove up the plank, basically. I mean, go feed the sharks if you're not gonna swab the
yeah.
decks. It's
Well,
a
that's in
fascinating way to live.
comparison. Yeah, in comparison to to typical English ships and Spanish ships, the typical ships of the time, the merchants and whatnot.
The funny thing about
Pirates,
English ships, they used to steal people to be on them. And I would imagine
yeah,
the pirates didn't have that problem. I bet they had tons of volunteers.
no, the pirates were actually historically quite democratic compared to the legal ships. They were quite fair with each other, um, and that's actually something that you're not going to see reflected back in fiction that often.
Yeah.
Um,
So, I mean,
yeah,
we could start with Edgar Rice Burroughs. Have you read any of him?
I don't believe I have no.
He is a classic speculative author. He's the one who did Tarzan and
Oh
John
yes,
Carter's
yes.
Mars. So, I mean, he's big time
Okay.
into speculative fiction. And he wrote
Yeah.
Pirates of Venus, which is, I mean, Tarzan has pirates in him. I mean, pirates are a trope. Pirates, you could use pirates for anything. If you're bored, you got your
Yeah.
character stuck in the middle of the water, just throw some pirates at them, and you're good to go.
Doesn't even have to be the water. It can be pretty much anything these days,
Sky
especially,
pirates, space pirates, and yeah, I mean, what
yeah.
is the definition of pirate? What can we use the word pirate in place of? I mean, what is a pirate? A pirate is a person that does piracy, who attacks
Yeah.
and robs at sea. I guess you can call him a freebooter, a marauder, a raider, a privateer, a buccaneer, a corsair.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and that's sorry, go ahead.
or they could be, downloading torrents off the internet and they're still called pirates.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
Robbing
it's
or
that whole
plundering.
concept. Yeah, it's that whole the whole Robin Hood concept, robbing the rich to give to the poor, except pirates aren't so much doing the giving part unless you consider them the poor. Um,
That's interesting,
but
man.
it,
There
it
are there are
was,
communities still in the Caribbean, throughout the Caribbean, on Jamaica, Barbados, who are there because of piracy. And if there wasn't
yeah,
pirates, then they wouldn't even be around. Um,
yeah.
kind of, what was it? I wrote a story, just a brief flash story about a place in Jamaica. Now I can't remember what it was called, but I mean, yeah, I mean, pirates have been instrumental in our history.
They had. And if you really look at it, the classical pirate as we know them, the Caribbean pirate that came up out of the privateers, it's a relatively brief part of history that they were around. It's not doesn't dominate much of our history, but especially there in the Caribbean, they really had an impact that even today is very real.
Yeah, and you could see it. I mean, in our
Hmm.
culture too. What I'm trying to look up is, who are the famous pirates? I mean, they don't even really exist in terms of the same kind of a imaginative force that we give them. I mean, a lot of pirates were just, sailors doing something for their king or queen. God, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was an Englishman. He was an English sailor. He was in the English Navy, and his queen said, "Go be a pirate," and he used to attack Spanish and French vessels and take them down. I mean, that was the pirate, basically.
Morgan? Something Morgan? I was just watching a documentary on that the other day. And that's the beginnings of the pirating age as we know it. Is with the privateers when the Spanish and English were fighting
wind sprints.
I'm sorry,
my son is doing wind sprints. My son is doing wind sprints above me. All I hear is thump, 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 thump. Oh man. Corsairs. What's a corsar? Maybe that's the word we're looking for here. A freebooter, a marauder. Who are some famous corsairs? Who are some famous pirates? Let's look that up. Famous pirates in history. Famous pirates in history.
Yeah, I just looked up. Yeah, it is Henry Morgan, who you're thinking of, I believe. The privateer.
I mean, you can go all the way back to 214 BC. Demetrius of Pharos. He was his actions participated in the Second Illyrian War. Middle Ages. I mean, we're talking about 15, 16, something along those lines. I mean, it was kind of the same way as using fire on Navy ships. I mean, use pirates. They sneak up on you and take out your supply lines from behind. I mean, it's genius. Genius.
Yeah, if you want to be a little bit more generous with the words, of course, you could definitely count Vikings into the piracy.
I think Vikings, though, they didn't really have an opportunity to really pirate at sea. They were more, let's get from place A to place B and then do our, raping and pillaging when we get there.
Yeah, but that was definitely part of piracy as well. That was a good portion of it. If you think of the typical sea battles, there wasn't an awful lot of that. If you think of how massive the ocean is, and of course, you really don't want to get in a gunfight out there. A lot of piracy happened with pillaging and plundering, the typical Viking type thing. Now, the Vikings were, of course, a little bit more landlocked, and there wasn't quite the same emphasis on battle at sea because there wasn't really a lot to stand in their way as far as that.
I mean, further south, maybe you would have had something coming out of Italy and Spain, but I mean, maybe, right? I mean, it's difficult because there was kind of a dark ages that kind of happened between the Roman era and the Renaissance, so to speak. It wasn't really a lot of sea traveling. There was more like suffering from the Black Plague happening. Trying to make sense of this new religion that was spreading up from Rome.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you really think about it, the Vikings shaped European history in an incredible way. And, the Viking, the Nordic people still just cover England. And England later became Britain later.
Out of my head.
Sorry.
Oh man, I'm so frustrated tonight, and I have another podcast coming up too. It's like, oh no. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. Vikings did shape European history in a big way, shaped world history in a big way. I mean, they colonized Greenland, they colonized Iceland, they might even possibly colonize Nova Scotia. And honestly, it doesn't make any sense they wouldn't have. If you look at Greenland and Nova Scotia, I mean, they're basically right on top of each other anyway. I mean, these are things of the imagination. These things definitely stand out. I've written Viking fiction. I've dabbled in some pirate stuff too. And God, space pirates, what an interesting idea. I mean, you cannot really stray too far away from that because you want to have the independence, right? When you're in space, when you're speculating about your world, you kind of want to see what would happen if you throw some conflict at somebody, and that conflict could look like pirates.
Yeah.
Do you write pirates in your stories?
Not so far, not yet. But I definitely have. I have something planned for possibly the beginning of next year. That's it's kind of taken out of my love for Treasure Planet, and it's definitely gonna include pirates. And they're definitely
Go
something
back
I
to
want to play
Treasure
around
Planet. Man, I need to watch this. I didn't even realize it was in space. I thought it was just a
with.
traditional, pirate show. It's an animated science fiction
Amazing.
adventure film released by Walt Disney in 2002. The concept of the film is, I don't know. Wikipedia sometimes annoys me because you can't read all the way through get all the information you want. What's the stupid story about?
It is a steampunk
retelling,
reimagining of Treasure Island.
Too bad they didn't go original with it, huh? I mean, it's such a shame that big movies just borrow these concepts from past generations and just recycle them.
I think we all recycle stories. I don't think there's been anything truly original for a very long time. Like if you look at anyone's fiction, there's going to be bits and pieces from history, from television, from other books.
I guess we talked about that before in terms of you have to owe to what's come before.
Yeah.
You have to pay homage.
And I do believe
this movie was a flop, though. This movie only made $109 million. Its budget was 140.
Yeah. It was a flop when it came out, and it's definitely kind of turned into one of those cult classics. And it was kind of, I watched a short documentary on it. It was kind of intentionally sunk. The people who did it, Disney kind of owed them. They kind of put in their dues when they decided to make this movie. And it wasn't something that Disney wanted to do, but they really had some incredible new technology, which is one of the reasons why the budget was so high. But it really reflects in the film. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous thing to look at. Artistically,
I don't remember it.
Just beautiful.
Treasure Island. I'm so dumb. What was that movie? What is it called?
It's Treasure Planet.
Treasure Planet. Okay, I wrote Treasure Island.
Yeah. Well,
I wonder. I mean, why don't they count him as a writer on this? Why don't they don't even put his name on the poster?
Yeah, but if you watch the movie, there really is. They built a lot.
Oh, they do. Robert Louis Stevenson's greatest adventure. Yeah, they make homage to him. It's interesting because now we have to go back to Robert Louis Stevenson and we have to talk about him because I mean he is the one that basically started this pirate fantasy type of adventure novel. I think.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the first. Yeah, I think pirates are just perfect pickings for fiction. They're so romanticized, and a lot of it's true. And
he's one of those authors too that had his. He's written like a dozen novels, right? And his second novel is Treasure Island.
Yeah,
I mean, but he's always got to live up to that novel. He can't. It probably never stopped overshadowing him.
I don't know if that's necessarily true. If I'm correct, let me look it up. I want to double check before I say this.
I don't see anything here I've ever heard of besides Treasure Island. As far as, I mean, if you look at Bram Stoker too, and he's got a list of novels that he's written, and Dracula is the one that stands out. Yeah. Or Mary Shelley. She's written other stuff besides Frankenstein. Not a lot, unfortunately, but Frankenstein is her seminal work. It pops. I mean, there's nothing else on that list that goes, oh yeah, she wrote that too. If you look at right now, it's hard because these people are generational. I mean, they're obviously he was writing in, the late 19th century, 1883 is when Treasure Island came out. So now we're looking at like a Stephen King or one of these popular, successful authors. What will be their seminal work that lives for over 130 years or something along those lines? who people adapt into different, speculative fiction because of how successful it was. Man, there's been so many TV shows and adaptations and movies about Treasure Island.
Oh
It's
yeah.
unbelievable. I mean, all
Yeah.
of them are musicals and plays, and it's ridiculous. And the amount of success this book had. And I honestly, what's difficult is looking back and trying to see where this started from. Where did the pirate fiction come from? I'm on TV tropes, kind of looking to see if I can spot that. And if you go down to literature, you see people that come after Robert Louis Stevenson. You don't see anybody before him. Nobody's writing in like the 19th or 18th century about pirates. You know what I mean? They were living the fear of pirates then, right? I mean, they generally feared getting onto a boat and seeing that black flag with the white skull and crossbones. I don't even know if that's a real thing or just made up. But you would be fearful of that, right? I mean, because they would rob you and kill you and throw you overboard for the sharks, or make your wars impossible, or whatever the hell they were going to do. They were reality. And then
but I feel
this
like
guy.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was about to sum up and say this guy basically, romanticized that in a way.
Yeah. And just I did look it up. He did also write Kidnapped, which is also a respected classic, and he did also write The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Oh, that was him? Okay. Well, that's two.
Yep.
Kidnapped, I guess, can count as well.
Yeah, it's still around, and it's
around,
it's been turned into a few movies. It's definitely not up there in name recognition with the other two that I mentioned.
Yeah, interesting. So I mean, yeah, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that definitely counts as speculative fiction because it's about, fantasy science, right? It's about chemistry, transforming a man into a beast. And also it has that whole satire thing of men can be beasts type situation happening. That's very interesting. But in terms of our subject today being pirates, I mean, he started this movement of pirate fiction.
Yeah, and I believe that if something is going to be feared, I think if something is feared, especially in such a massive way, then it is going to be eventually romanticized.
Yeah.
Especially,
but by the time he was writing these books, I don't think pirates are really a big issue anymore. Obviously, if you're, on a tanker cruising by the east coast of Africa, you're going to be a little fearful of pirates. But I mean, they're not out there in the world that we live in. And maybe they weren't even out there in the world that Robert Louis Stevenson was living in either, potentially.
Yeah, I feel like historically at that point there was a lot of cheap literature and stories. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there was someone who traveled around with a few pirates and wrote down their life stories and did quite well selling those. But I might be wrong off of that. I wouldn't be able to name who it is.
I mean, yeah, you have pirates in the late 19th century, right? Bully Hayes and Layden Agee and James Shanghai Kelly, up until like the middle of the 19th century or something. But you reach the time that Robert Louis Stevenson was writing, and that's it, man. There wasn't really anything. So he was definitely writing about a bygone era and trying to bring it into modern prose, and he did an excellent job. I mean, I can't see anybody else writing about pirates before him.
Yeah, not with that note and that popularity. Definitely not.
I mean, let's see, Edgar Rice Burroughs. I think he was in the beginning of the 20th century. So I mean, you could definitely say that he was inspired by Robert Louis Stevenson, and he's and he wrote about space pirates, which is cool. I mean, the idea of space pirates is fantastic. I've only written it from a scavenging type situation. My pirates were scavengers. They were planning on doing something horrible to the planet Earth, but they weren't really robbing or stealing other spaceships. They were stealing junk from around the orbit of our planet.
Yeah.
What kind of pirates are you going to write? Have you decided?
Like I said, it's kind of what I'm looking at is kind of taking out of my love for Treasure Planet. So kind of the thing that really stands out about Treasure Planet is that it is steampunk, and typically when in steampunk you'll see airships. So usually it's pirates are riding in blimps or zeppelins, something like that, or they have a typical pirate ship. Like, I don't know, have you ever seen Stardust or read it? A Neil
Yeah,
Gaiman, I believe.
I do like Gaiman.
They
I only like what's it called? The big one, The Shadow. Was it? Anyway, I've read one of his books. I can't get any other of his work. It just kind of bores me for some reason. It's just not as gripping. But the big one I like, the one that's on
Sorry, go
Stars,
ahead.
whatever that TV show is, that's out now. God, my brain is gone. American Gods, yeah, absolutely. That's a great book. Love the hell out of it, but none of his other stuff really appeals to me. But anyway, Stardust, yeah, the Robert De Niro character in the movie.
Yeah, and they're pirates, but they're not quite pirates because they're not actually doing much piracy. They're harvesting lightning, but they are described as pirates. And that's definitely, but that's, there's the other version of space pirates that, they're in the actual ship. And that was what was in Treasure Planet, is these ships that could go in space, and space was kind of treated as the ocean, and these ships would travel back and forth. So I'm looking at something steampunk pirates, very very kind of classical steampunk, but with a little bit more fantasy, and definitely pulling from some of my favorite parts of Treasure Planet, especially the relationships I bring in. I think that's what impacted me the most about Treasure Planet, is the characters and the relationships that they have. Has impacted all my writing.
Would you ever borrow a book like Treasure Island or another classic and try to rewrite it into another genre?
I've seen a lot of people doing it. It's definitely very popular right now. I've seen it done well. I feel like I personally, I don't have a problem with it, but I prefer to do something of my own. So
You
no,
want to
I
make an
don't.
original story?
Yeah, I don't see myself doing a retelling of any sort.
I mean, I guess when I see Treasure Planet, I'm thinking to myself, I've heard this story before and I'm uninterested. And I guess a lot of people felt the same way because they didn't go to the movies to see it.
Yeah,
I've
well, it
seen
definitely
Treasure
wasn't
Planet. Why are you
advertised
showing this to
very
me?
much. Yeah.
No, it didn't. I remember
Well,
it
I
coming
think.
out. I didn't see it though. I remember it getting
Oh yeah.
ridiculed. Yeah, it did not do very good.
Yeah. No, it
15
didn't.
years
It
ago
didn't.
or
And right
10
now
years
it's
ago.
very, very, very. It's not very, very, but it's much more popular right now. Um, I think. I think like you're gonna see endless retellings of Peter Pan. There's a lot of fairy tale retellings that are very popular right now. Some that are done very well, some that are not. Um, and there's a few classic retellings that I've seen out there. I know Alice in Wonderland gets retold a million times.
So you don't want to write
So
space pirates as much as you want to write sky pirates.
I definitely want to bring the actual space travel.
It's really fascinating though. Pirate ships are a big element to this. I mean, it's about the vessel. It's about
Yeah,
the thing that you get on that you use to rob and steal and pillage from other people.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you think definitely about space pirates in particular, um, we don't really have any concept of space travel in the way that we write about it, in space opera and whatnot. We don't know what that would look like realistically. So the only thing we have to pattern it after is ships and what we've seen on
Yeah,
the ocean. You know,
that's very
so
true.
yeah. So you'll see any kind of space battle is going to look a lot um, like a nautical battle, like a
That's definitely a trope.
Navy
Space
battle.
as replacing the ocean. Space
Yeah,
sailing, naval and maritime terms used, and they're always like interchanged with space travel. I think Star Trek
yeah,
is really good about using that, the ranks, and kind of using
yeah. Well,
those buzzwords.
we don't have anything else to pattern it after. We really don't.
Like where we are patterning it after that. I mean, whatever's going to happen going into the future, that
Yeah,
seems to be what's going on at this point in time, is that there is a connection between being a spacefaring person, people, culture, and a seafaring culture, people.
yeah,
It's amazing if you think about it, because maybe you can go back and shake Robert Louis Stevenson's hand and say, hey, look, dude, look what you're doing. You're influencing space travel. Right? I
yeah,
mean, Jules Verne was already writing, the moon thing, and here's Robert Louis Stevenson, writing about pirates and whatnot, and he's influencing what's going to be talked about in space pirates. I mean,
yeah,
it's a very fascinating way how things can connect with each
yeah.
other. In
Definitely.
terms of space sailing, there's a ton of people writing stuff. But again, like if you're looking at dates, if you're looking at people who are doing it, who have already died, who aren't writing anything anymore, nobody was doing it before Robert Louis Stevenson.
Yeah,
He was the number one. He was the first, and it's truly incredible.
yeah. It was a children's story. It still
Treasure
is
Island, yeah, it
very,
was. It was a
enchanted to
YA,
read.
wasn't it? It had that
Yeah,
that central child character who went on an adventure in a world outside of his own, and magnificent things happened to him.
yeah, yeah. And today, even in a lot of our literature, you can see that classical character of Long John Silver reflected. He's just one of the best, most incredibly written villains to ever exist. Really still comes across a lot. And of course,
Man, can you
with the peg
imagine
leg.
writing something like this? I mean, he has written something that will last forever. I mean, your next
Yeah.
book is going to be a Treasure Island, and one of your characters, Long John Silver, is going to be recognized instantaneously as the dude with the parrot and the peg leg. I mean,
Yeah.
that's powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, there wasn't many people he was competing with back in 1890. Nobody had Google Documents, pounding words out into the ether, trying to be an independent publisher. He was basically by himself one of the few literate people trying to be successful, and he was very literate. He wrote literature
Mm-hmm.
and did a very good job at it. Long John Silver is not really a trope. I mean, black sails. That's so fascinating. It really honestly is. Um, but it almost seems like everybody's trying to borrow from him too. It doesn't really get much deeper than this. I don't really think. The treasure hunt, trying to find or pillage, or oh man,
Yeah.
Long John Silver's is a restaurant. We don't have any in Jersey.
Yeah, we have them here. It used to be one of my favorites when I was a kid because I did love Treasure Island and Treasure Planet so much. It was really formative in my childhood. So I remember coming home to the States and being like, look, there's a Long John Silver's restaurant. We can get fish and chips.
Oh, that's interesting. I want to go to Long John Silver so bad. I love it so much. There really is nothing. There's nowhere near me. Oh, wait, there is. There's one on Staten Island. I could drive all the way to Staten Island to get Long John Silver's. Is that worth it?
There you go.
There's one.
I don't know.
There's one in Highland Park.
How much do you crave Long John Silver's?
The bad thing about fast food restaurants around where I live is they all suck. Every single one of them. The employees that work there do not want to work there. They're mad at everybody because they have to work there, and you get some of the shittiest food you've ever had in your life because they don't want to work there. That's my guess anyway. I don't know.
I guess it keeps you from eating fast food too much, huh?
Yeah, that would do it. I mean, it's horrible. So there's no point in going to McDonald's because it's going to suck. It's just not going to be very good at all. But yeah, man, Long John Silver's, you'd go there and just load up on fried shrimp and fish, and the chicken's good, and the hush puppies. My wife has never been. She does not know the joy of a Long John Silver's.
You should take her. Fish and chips. Come on. You still love it.
It's not too far.
Americans don't really do
287.
fish and chips.
I know they don't. Do you have Arthur Treacher's down there? I think it's Arthur Treacher's.
No, I haven't seen any of that.
That's a fish and chip place. There's a few places in New York that have it. Fish and chips. Yeah, it's really good. I'm going to Amsterdam on Wednesday. Maybe we'll have fish and chips.
Yeah.
Maybe. I doubt it. They have pickled herring. Maybe we can ask them to deep fry it for me.
There you go. Deep fried pickled herring.
Walking the plank. I mean, there's tons of tropes here. But that's not really one of them, is it? Eating good seafood. When you think of pirates, that's not what you think about. You think about grog, you think about rum, you think about getting drunk, you think about pirate. What's the songs? Pirate diddlies? No, what are they called? Pirate chanties.
Yeah. Well, I mean, pirates didn't have very good food. They didn't.
Yeah. And what do pirates eat?
Yeah.
They had to have cooked, right? I mean, why wouldn't you want to eat good on a pirate ship?
Well, you know, the food just didn't last, so a lot of it was salted within an inch of its life. And it was,
very true.
There wasn't a lot of vegetables and stuff.
What do they call it? Tack, right? TACT or something like that. What is it called? The food, the really salty food.
Yeah.
TACT. I mean, is that what it is?
No, I believe it's TAK. Tack. I might be wrong. I'm a horrible speller. I'm a writer, but I can't spell for.
Well, yeah, we're all kind of handicapped by Google and Word and all that. Hardtack. I should just look up hardtack, not food tack.
Yes.
Hardtack. You're right. It is tack, like TACK though, and it's a cracker.
Okay.
So it didn't even like food. It's like cracker. So they eat crackers and they drank rum. So they were drunk all the time, and they're constantly swabbing the deck and getting whipped and being shoved off planks into the ocean. And there's always sharks behind them. You know, the water is just teeming with sharks, waiting for the next person to get shoved overboard. I guess, right? But when you think of pirates, they're not really slave traders, are they? Or are they?
Not typically. Slave traders were often actually legal. They were more on the legal. True. They were considered merchants. So actually, the pirates were kind of the enemy of that, and there were a lot of freed slaves that were pirates. Because you know, you attack merchants and they're selling human beings, and you're like, hey, come work for us. And like I said, the pirates were much more democratic than the more legal merchants and whatnot.
Where do pirates get their ships?
A lot of the pirates started as privateers. So they were already sailors, they were merchants, and then during the war between England and Spain, having to do with the new land, America, England in particular, but both sides would pay these people, not necessarily pay them, but they gave them a legal document saying you are a privateer, you are our navy, and they would hire them to go out and attack the ships of the other people. Well, when the war ended and they were expected to go back to being merchants, of course they didn't want to because they were making so much money. So.
Yeah, sometimes they mutiny as well. They just mutiny. Say, you know what? We're pirates now. Good guys, go swimming. And the other times they would steal the ship. They would just go into the harbor and say, okay, this is our ship now. And they would go sailing off.
Yeah, well, I mean,
so you had all three ways, didn't you?
Yeah, it's a really, being a sailor is just a really miserable life. They were basically rotting alive from malnutrition, from scurvy. They were risking their life every time they went out on the job. They were away from their homes for a long time. And a lot of them didn't get paid.
What homes? So, I mean, yeah, they were young people. I mean, they were 20, 19, 16. They were young. They probably didn't have homes. They probably had like parents. They didn't give a flying crap if they came back to the house or not. It's just another mouth to fill. So I mean, they hung around where they they could, where their other 16, 17-year-olds were hanging out. And the next thing you know, they're waking up with a splitting headache in the middle of the ocean going, okay, now what? Now I'm a pirate, or now I'm the Navy guy, or whatever. They were, what is it, keelhauled? Is that what it's called? I think it's called keelhauled.
Shanghai.
Shanghai, that's what it is.
And that's actually what Kidnapped is about, which is
That's
the
what
other
my
Robert
story was
Louis.
about, being Shanghai.
Yeah.
Shanghai. I cannot spell. Shanghai. Shanghai.
Yeah.
Forced conscription and conscription.
And that wasn't so much of a pirate thing, really, because people wanted to be pirates.
No,
Pirates
it was the Navy. It was the Royal Navy doing it more than anybody else, impressing sailors. I mean, yeah, man, how horrible. Did you ever see that movie with Gladiator dude, Russell Crowe? Master and Commander is what it was called.
Master and Commander? Yeah, I've seen it once. It's been a while. It was one of my dad's favorites. I remember seeing it.
They did such a great job of relaying that history on film.
Oh, it really is.
And the idea of being on a ship at war with another ship in the middle of an ocean with nothing but deadliness beneath you is just mind-blowing. I mean, the ship becomes shrapnel. The ship starts attacking you. And it would just be random. I mean, it's just incredibly dangerous. And to wake up in that, say, oh, okay, any minute we can see somebody come out of the fog and I'm going to have splinters of wood all in my body and I'll be dying. It's pretty impressive. That's what we did to each other, 100 years ago, maybe 200 years ago. Not even like 150 years ago. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. It was finally abolished in 1915. So, I mean, that's 103 years ago that we said, okay, guys, we're not going to kidnap anybody and put them on the boat. That's something that we don't do anymore in our society.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say,
yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing that, we have these waterways between our continents, right? We need to navigate them. And now, not really anymore, because we have planes that we can get goods and people across that way. There aren't any pirates in the sky. Nobody's going to knock on your door at 30,000 feet and demand they enter your plane or whatever. I mean, they might be already on your plane to do that, but they're not going to be coming from out exterior. But you were stuck. I mean, if you wanted to get your goods from Europe to America, you had to put up with this up until about the mid 19th century. In 1850, I mean, you had to deal with pirates. If you wanted to be a sailor, you had to be worried about getting knocked on the head. And 1 minute, all of your personal belongings are on one boat, but you are stuck on another, and you had to stay there. I mean, they weren't going to let you go. You were going to be on that boat for years until you died.
Yeah.
It's definitely an interesting. It's so important that they didn't care. You know what I mean? Nobody's knocking you over the head and saying, you're a priest now, or knocking you over the head and saying, you're a lawyer now. They were knocking you over the head and saying, you're a poor, replaceable sailor. Go enjoy what's left of your life.
Yeah. Well, I believe in that period of time. And, throughout history, slavery and human trafficking has been an issue. It still is a huge issue. But there's during that specific period of time, because of colonization, you had the African slave trade. You had impressed servanthood that was happening in the United States. You had the colonization in Australia, where they were taking criminals and forcing them into slavery in Australia, as well as in some of the American
taking land away from people who are already living there and calling it your own. I mean, that was definitely something that was happening during this time too. We're better than you. You've got to follow us or get off our land or worship our gods or do this thing and the other thing or whatever to make sure that we don't kill you, because if you don't listen to us, we will kill you. Australia, Africa, the Americas. I mean, this is happening around the world by Europeans. I mean, colonialization was brutal.
Yeah, and during that period, it was especially rampant, and there was a lot of human trafficking happening. And it's especially interesting to me because in the modern day, we have enslaved more people than was ever possible before, but we have distanced ourselves from it. You can buy someone over the internet, and you can distance yourself from it and not believe them to be human. But in those days, you can't distance yourself from it. You can't distance yourself from, a boat full of human beings dying, not even just, people of a different race that you convince are not human, because it wasn't just that. They were taking orphans from England and nailing them into coffins to hide them and shipping them over to America to be sold as slaves.
Yeah.
So the level of the lack of empathy is just insane, that you could cut yourself off from that and that you could do that to other human beings.
It's so sad though. It's still happening. I mean, the brutality still exists. Abu Dhabi, I believe, is the country that it will be, or is it? I don't know, what country is going to have the World Cup? Is it Abu Dhabi? No, it's the other one. That's name is escaping me. But anyway, they use these Indian workers from India, these Indian workers who pay to come there and work, who give their passports over, and they earn like a certain amount of money. And basically, they work deadly, deadly jobs that they get killed at doing. And either they quit because they're so dangerous and they lose money and they're stuck in these countries, or they go to prison for contract violation, or they're not making out like they hoped they would. You know what I mean? They're coming from the slums of India. They're coming from horrible places, going to horrible places, doing horrible things. Mexico, NAFTA, we ship down all of these factories to build cars or whatever. We pay them $5 a day. $5 a day. What is that a year? Not a lot. $1,500 a year we pay them to build cars for us. I mean, you probably have a smartphone. I know I have a smartphone. They're coming from China, paying them pennies to build these smartphones for us. I mean, slavery is still out there with a different name.
Oh, it is.
I
all over
think
the place.
we're talking about pirates ultimately, right? I mean, we're talking about the idea of these forcible acts. And I think piracy comes from colonialization, because the governments were saying we could do whatever we want because there is no morality except in God. And if they're not worshiping our God, then we're just going to do whatever we want with them. And pirates are like, hey, you know what? They're not really putting any morality into their thinking, so neither do we. So now you have pirates, and we still kind of have that happening nowadays, don't we?
Yeah, but I think it's a little bit. The amazing thing about pirates is we often paint them as the bad guys. They were the ruthless ones. They were the bloodthirsty ones. They were the cruel ones. But in all reality, they had a better sense of brotherhood and of a democracy between them than on the typical, like I've said over and over again.
Yeah, they are what we kind of. They are what we. Yeah, whether they're fair to each other, but they also are what we value in human beings. They took chances. They didn't say, "Oh, well, I don't have a ship, so I just won't be a captain, and I won't, make money on the ocean." They said, "I'm going to get a ship, and I'm going to make money on the ocean. I'm going to make my own way, and I don't care what it takes." They're living their dreams. I mean, pirates are living dreams. I mean, they're basically living the way they want to live. They're not being forced to live like that. They're doing it because they want to.
A lot of them were fighting back against that. And I think that's one of the reasons why they're so romanticized.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, there's such a picture of contradiction, because on the one hand, there is that freedom, and that, especially in America, that freedom is something that we romanticize so much and that we love, that fighting spirit, and that I'm not going to allow you to enslave me. I'm going to kill you and take your ship, and just come and try and take me back. I dare you.
No, it's very interesting, because that's exactly what they were doing, isn't it? They were fighting against the government, who was willing to hurt people to work their ships. The pirates had more than enough people normally to work their ships. I mean, they were taking ships back from, you know, corrupt merchant captains who are, you know, not doing a very good job. Okay, you suck as being a captain, but now this is our ship.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are happy about that.
Yeah. And if you look at just the demographics of them as well, there were quite a few women captains, women pirates who are quite well known, black pirates who were quite well known, like I said, you know, fighting back against the systems of slavery. Just
a lot of
all over the world,
marginalized people who wanted a stake in the world, wanted a part of it, who were told, no, you don't look like me. Go back and do whatever you were doing. Basically, be a slave. And I said, no.
Well, you
I'm
know,
going to take part of it.
So. Yeah, even more so, people who were taken, who were bought or kidnapped or shanghaied or you know, what have you, who just decided, you know what, I'm done. If this is what you're going to do to me, I'm going to live within the world that you've created, but you are not going to like it.
Well, so I think it speaks of the inevitability of death, right? I mean, we're going to all die eventually anyway, and I'm going to enjoy my existence rather than make you rich with my existence, which is what they were fighting against. I'm not going to make you rich. I'm going to take what you have because I don't think it's necessary for you to have everything.
Yeah.
In a way. I mean, this is it's fascinating for speculative fiction because, you know, without conflict, you don't have a story. You know what I mean? And pirates are conflict. Whether you're writing from the perspective of a pirate or you're writing from the perspective of a merchant, you're either going to have somebody who wants something they can't have unless they forcibly take it, or you have somebody who has something and wants to keep it by any means necessary. And that potentially means defending themselves from pirates. So, I mean, this conflict is cool, and pirates are a good catalyst for that.
Yeah, yeah. And just the whole concept of pirates, I mean, it's super simplistic, and yet there's so much complexity and history in it. It's just something that you can explore endlessly.
Culture. There's so much culture in it, too. I mean, God.
There is.
And you owe a lot to them, too. I mean, like we were talking about before with the Caribbean, I mean, the Caribbean is dripping in pirate culture.
Yeah.
Dripping in it. Rum, grog. I mean, I don't know what grog is. What is it? Rum with oats in it?
If I am not mistaken, because I was just watching a documentary on it the other day, but I might not be remembering correctly. I believe it is water with a small amount of alcohol in it.
Yeah,
usually rum to kill off the bacteria.
Of the water. Yeah.
Yes, in the water.
Yeah, that's
so
100% correct.
Drink.
It was just a way to keep water on the ship without it going bad.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Did you hear my son?
Yes.
They had a birthday party for a friend of theirs today, so they went over there and he came back crazy. I guess they ate a bunch of sugar and he was all over the place. All over the place. He's usually very active and rambunctious anyway, but you know, give the kid some sugar and oh my God. It is not a good situation. He's a pirate. He's a pirate of my patience when he has sugar. It is not good. So, I mean, what's some mythological ideas behind pirates? Are not mythological? I want more magical. Can we stretch this into a more fantastical realm?
I think
God, I think Pirates of the Caribbean kind of did that, didn't they? They really did a great job.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of folklore around it, especially if you consider ghost ships and all that.
Ghost ships.
Yeah, and of course,
the horror
element. If we're also. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying. I was repeating ghost ships. I love the idea.
Yeah.
Of ghost ship.
Ghost ships are. So yeah, they definitely, with Pirates of the Caribbean, they definitely pulled in that magical aspect, which is probably what made it stand out so much from the typical pirate movie. But if you also want to include Vikings and Greek.
Well, they have the mythology too.
All that. Oh yeah.
What I want though is magic. I mean, what I think the Pirates of the Caribbean movies kind of did was they had monsters, right? They had Davy Jones's locker, and they had pirates that live forever. Now my daughter's jumping into the fray. She's screaming her head off now. That's the stuff that I want to see in the fiction as well. Just a more nautical type of monsters and mayhem and sorcery and witches and and whatnot. I think it's fascinating that Disney came up
Yeah.
with that, and I wonder if that existed prior. I know it's Lovecraftian, right? I mean, you had kind of like that Lovecraft weird tale stuff, but
Yeah.
Pirates of the Caribbean didn't blink. They kind of just went through with it. Does that exist anywhere else besides Pirates of the Caribbean, the movie series?
You mean in fiction?
Yeah.
There's not
Can you
something I
think
can
of
think
any
of off the
writers
top
that
of my
can do
head.
it?
I do
Me
know.
either.
Yeah, I can't think of anything super popular, but I do know it's there. I've seen, especially the writer community on Twitter. I see, they have. If you've seen those writer aesthetics, there's so many that are pirate themed. Um,
Right.
there's a lot of fancy that does bring in pirates, that does bring in the nautical, and that does include magic in some form. I just can't think of anything that was as popular as Pirates of the Caribbean. Pirates of the Caribbean was just, it's one of those movies, like Jurassic Park and The Matrix, and that just kind of stands out in cinema history. It's just, very, very, very
I mean,
well
is it
done.
just taking stuff from the lore of the sea basically and spinning it in a more contemporary setting? I mean, because I'm not finding anything either. I'm
Yeah.
looking up pirate magic or pirate mythology, trying to find some of these things that Disney obviously probably did not create on their own, right? I mean, they're
Uh,
really
yeah,
horrible at they just borrow stuff left and right.
yeah. Well, there was an incredible amount of folklore and mythology in seafaring cultures in general. Like
Superstitions,
if you
right?
look at if you look at what they're dealing with, it's not, when you're looking at the ocean, it's not something you can predict, especially, in those days, you don't have any radars to see storms coming. You don't have ways to test the waters. You have, your skill up against this incredible thing that is the ocean that can
This
kill
deadly
you.
beast,
And
yeah, exactly.
yeah, you just
It
disappear
doesn't
off the
care.
face of
I
the
mean,
earth.
any second could be a rogue wave that just washes over you and you drown.
Yeah,
Painful 30 to 3 minutes of your life just not being able to do anything. I
yeah.
looked up on Wikipedia some of the tropes of being a sailor,
Mm-hmm.
sailor superstitions, and I think a lot of this stuff comes into the Pirates of the Caribbean, where they
Yeah.
took something like a Jonah as somebody who is bad luck among um, seafaring people, or Fridays are unlucky days for some reason. The
Yeah.
sirens from Greek mythology, which goes back to what you were talking about, these beautiful women on rocks who call to the sailors who, crash or drown because they want to get to
Yeah.
them or whatever. Man, you're from Florida. Back in the day, manatees used to be thought to be mermaids somehow.
Yes.
It's such a disgusting, ugly animal, and they thought they were beautiful women in the water. It just makes no sense to me whatsoever. Albatross is obviously, what was it called? The Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. That was such a brilliant poem.
Mm.
Bananas? Don't eat a banana on a boat. It's considered bad luck.
No wonder they're all dying of scurvy. Vegetables and fruit are bad luck.
Whistling? Don't whistle. It's considered bad luck. It's a whistle challenges the wind itself. And if you whistle, it might bring a storm. Another
I
tale is that
love
it has
that.
been, yeah, right? You whistle and it's challenging the wind to whistle back. Um, yeah, it's fascinating. So good luck stuff. Cats are considered good luck. Unless it's a black cat, and that's considered unlucky. So that doesn't go far from normality. What the
Yeah.
hell is a cormorant? That's a bird. In
Mm-hmm.
Scandinavian, it's a good omen to see cormorants, which I don't know if I'm saying that right or not. So in the same
Yeah.
breath, whistling is bad luck. Whistling is also good luck. Whistling on board a sailing ship is thought to encourage the wind strength to increase. This is regularly alluded to in other books.
Yeah, probably
So
depends on the culture. Even
yeah, it
ship
says
to
on
ship,
boats
I'm
and
sure.
ships. On boats and ships where whistling was taboo, the cook was usually excused so they could whistle, and they were, I guess, they were not stealing the food. Also, the cooks were encouraged to whistle because obviously if they were stealing food, they couldn't whistle. So if you were a cook, you had to whistle to show that you weren't stealing food. It's fascinating. I mean, obviously, I mean, we have what a seafaring culture that goes back thousands and thousands of years. I mean, I imagine the Egyptians had boats. I mean, that's how they kind of transported their gigantic monolithic stones, right? They had boats on the Nile.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is a culture that humanity and trying to conquer the waters of our earth go hand in hand. I mean, it makes sense too that we're kind of using it to conquer the in-betweens of planets as well. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of similar themes there.
Davy Jones is a popular character and a character in sailor lore, especially in Gothic fiction. It's an idiom for the bottom of the sea and the state of death among drowned sailors. It's a euphemism for death at sea, and the origins of the name is not clear. But many theories have put forth there was actually a Davy Jones who was a pirate on the Indian Ocean in the 1630s, pub owner and kidnapped sailor, and then dumped into the ocean. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm so happy that we had an opportunity to talk about pirates.
Yeah.
Did we neglect to mention anything that you thought was important to the subject?
I don't think so. No, we covered it quite thoroughly.
Yeah, I'm going to explore. I've always enjoyed the idea of writing about pirates, and I'd like to kind of. I mean, obviously, Disney does a really great job of scraping, every single morsel of tasty stuff into their movies. And if you study those movies, I mean, there is a ton of stuff that you can use in a fantasy setting. D&D uses pirates, so they've got a lot of stuff built up for that too. I mean, just really, I would imagine just look for water magic type stuff, and you can find pirates there too. It's just fascinating.
Oh yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot left to explore, and there's definitely still an appetite for it.
There's what?
There's definitely still an appetite for it.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and especially if you put it into space. Especially if you put it into space. Man, I love the idea.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, I love the idea that we're reaching for Mars right now and beyond. And if we start putting colonies on these little planets, I mean, and people can get into space, there's going to be pirates there attacking these missions back and forth. I mean, I cannot see that not happening. I mean, if space opens up to everybody, that means bad people will be up there as well as good people. So yeah, man, it's really, really fascinating idea of pirates.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah, wish you luck. How far into the story are you with your steampunk space pirate situation?
I'm still in the planning stages right now. What I'm looking at doing is I have I have the first book written. However, I believe I'm going to split it into two. So it needs a lot of work. But I was thinking about doing a standalone between this one and the next, and I wanted to do something a little bit out of the norm for me. I wrote a pirate book as a child. My best friend and I used to write all the time, and we wrote a pirate book together. So I wanted to take some of those and, of course, pay homage to Treasure Planet and Treasure Island, and play with the steampunk genre, and also do my first, single POV female main character. So I'm thinking about doing just a standalone, putting it out between the end of this year, when the trilogy is going to be finished and out, and when I start on my fantasy.
Interesting. Fantasy writers on Reddit is a subreddit that I enjoy quite a bit.
Yeah.
And the reason that I mention it is one of their upcoming challenges. They offer like monthly challenges. A bunch of people jump in and write like a 5,000 word story or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Their challenge in a few months is about not gonna. Hold on one second. I'm pulling it up right now, and I'm looking, and my computer's loading, and it's I thought there was some kind of merman thing that's here anyway. I would advise you just to look at those challenges because they're really interesting in terms of being able to find places to write about pirates and stuff. In fact, I think I'm going to challenge. I'm going to put my own challenge up this week and make it pirate based, just because I like the
Just
idea.
because you get to read everyone's versions. Yep.
Exactly. All right. Well, this is fantastic. Do you want to? Is there anything else you want to mention before we sign off on pirates?
No. I think that's about all I have to say about pirates. I mean, I'm sure we could talk about them for a good long bit more.
We could do a part two if you'd like.
Subject. Yeah.
We'll schedule something for May.
Bye.